It really has changed my whole perception of like who has the power and what they do with their power and how I contribute to that conversation. So 2 years ago, I say I've taught in the same school community for 9 years, but really the first 7 of those years were at a certain school. And then that school was shut down by the Board of Education and the superintendent. All the students and teachers went to a school that was right beside that school. So it was still it was in the community and it was still the same teachers and kids. That context is important because so when they had recommended on closing our school 2 years ago, I was very unaware of what a Board of Education meant and like worked and what they did. And I basically just like made it my mission to like figure it out because I wasn't happy with their recommendation to close our school. And I was like confused because a lot of people were just like, oh man, that's a bummer. But like carrying on with their day. And I was like, we can like fight this. Like we can do something about this. We don't have to just accept it. And everyone was kind of like, oh, because I think, you said before, like teachers just kind of, we do what we're told and, and it's like, no, I don't do what I'm told actually. So I started reaching out to the board members. I started reaching out to the superintendent, had like meetings and interviews with like pretty much all of them. I wrote an article that was published in the Black Wall Street Times here in Tulsa. The Tulsa World interviewed me, like several news stations interviewed me. Because basically I was just like, what are you standing on saying that our school should be closed? I teach in North Tulsa where a lot of our community gets forgotten about. And when you walk into schools on the other side of town that are funded by the same dollars as my school, it's like I don't recognize where I am. And so I didn't feel like they had ground to stand on for why they wanted to close our school. Yeah. And so I would have these conversations and I would have these debates. And I remember the superintendent called me one day and she was like, Hannah, I just want to let you know I've really thought a lot about what you've been saying. And, I know you're not going to like this, but I am going to continue with my recommendation. And so in that moment, I was like, oh, were you actually considering? Because in my mind, I was like, I'm going to fight this fight because it's important, but not because I think I even have a chance of actually accomplishing what I want, which would be not closing our school. But when she called me, I was like, she could just be saying nice to me. But part of me was like, oh, like, did I actually maybe convince you for a second that like you shouldn't? The board meetings that we attended in person, the first time it was just presented as like information, so they weren't voting on it. And we had like 10 speakers show up and it was decent. And then people were like, if you want to like actually maybe like have them change their mind, like you got to pack this room. And so the 2 weeks later when they voted on the recommendation to close, we had people standing in the back. There were no seats left. We had 2 hours worth of people getting up to speak. We had people in tears, we had people yelling, shouting, like the whole thing. And 4 people voted to close our school, 3 people voted to keep it open. So we were 1 vote away. And I just remember, obviously I was extremely disappointed and really heartbroken at the decision, but I will never like forget that I was like, we were close. Like we changed some minds. Like we got people talking, we got people thinking, and it's still talked about even to this day. That was 2 years ago, and I watch all the board meetings still, and I stay informed now on what decisions they're making. I call in and I write emails still, so